This meeting is live streaming. Let's go live with Jack Kelly. I think we're live. Christine, we're live, right?
Let me check.
Yes. Let's
Yes,
say, yes, we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, so if the US had a 4-day work week, we would not be talking right now. We'd all be home for a 3-day weekend. But as of now, well, we'll see. Maybe this will happen. So what I'd like to talk about today, Belgium, which, if you're not aware, is a country in Europe, right? It's Europe, not Asia or something. Belgium, chocolate, beer, all kinds of good stuff comes from Belgium. Dorothy Dalton, who gave us some good insight of what to talk about today, because Belgium has announced they're having a 4-day work week and a 3-day weekend. And what's really interesting, this is a trend that we've been seeing since the pandemic, where companies are starting to realize, in a war for talent with the Great Resignation, that they have to really take care of their employees. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, of course they should. But think about it. Go back to pre-COVID times. Go back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Employees really weren't that valued. They were. But companies really didn't bend over backwards to make sure that they're happy and they're empowered. Now that it's a hot job market, there's a great resignation with about 4 million people quitting each month. There's a war for talent because it's hard to find people, particularly in certain areas like tech. Companies' leadership now realizes we have to really do what it takes to make our people happy. Cynically, some are going to do it just because they know they have to, their arm is twisted. Others are really forward thinking and realize, hey, if we don't lavish our people with care, empathy, compassion, attention, they're going to go elsewhere. They'll quit or they'll be disengaged, which sometimes could be worse because they're just not invested in the company and what they're doing. And some of the things that I've seen recently from speaking to chief human resource officers, chief people officers, CEOs, other executives, is that they're offering such an array of different benefits that never had before. Walmart, Amazon, Target, they're giving free college tuition. You have others that are remote work. You have digital nomads, where if you want to just live out of your RV and travel the world, travel the country, if you want to travel the world, that's okay. A number of companies, if let's say you worked in New York and Silicon Valley, but you want to move and go somewhere else that's much less expensive, you'll get paid the same. There's some companies that say, I think LinkedIn is one of them. Let's take a week off, or 2 weeks even. I'm not sure but let's say at least a week off where everybody's off. So this way there's no pressure to respond to Slack messages, emails, texts. It's because everybody's just decompressing. And then you have little things like no Zoom Friday. These are just some of the things they're offering, but one of the newest ones, and it's gaining a lot of momentum, is the 4-day work week. And that's where they're basically saying, hey, for companies, a number of countries have adopted it. A number of companies have adopted it too. And so that you have 4 days working and then 3 days off. And the theory is, hey, if you're going to work those 4 days, you can just kind of work, do your best, and then you have 3 days just to chill, relax, decompress. So Christine, Mike, what do you think about this twofold, this new era we're in, where it's really employee empowerment era, plus this 4-day work week? Do you think that's good, bad? And do you think this could happen in the US? And it is happening in the US for companies, but like across the board.
I think the fact that this topic has even permeated into mainstream media makes me think that there's a chance. Like just a few years ago, we never really heard much people talking about this. And now it's a constant trending topic. And I see it trending on all social media platforms. But I do think it will take like a marquee name in order for other companies in the US to adopt it. Or even just an endorsement from the Business Roundtable. I think that would even mean a lot. Yeah, I think there's a chance.
What do you think of some of the positives about a 4-day work week?
worker burnout. I think it'll decrease worker burnout. I think less turnover, lower operational costs since they'll be open one day less, and then a larger applicant pool, because I think it'll be an attractive recruiting tool for recruiters for sure.
See, that's a really interesting point, because I want to say it was like Kickstarter's GC, but I could be wrong about, his title, is that they'll look and say, wait a minute, it's hard if you're not the size of a Google, Amazon, Apple to get the best, most talented software developers and software engineers because they get paid a lot of money. So how else can we compete? And I think Christine is saying we could compete by saying, you know what, we're going to appeal to people who want a better work-life balance. The pay may not be the same, but yet you have a 3-day work, 3 days off, so that you have a better lifestyle, better quality of life.
And you also covered a SHRM study today, and 80% of the HR professionals indicated that they're going to make employee morale and engagement a top priority. And I think looking at something like the 4-day work week falls under that umbrella.
Mike Tiller, what do you think? Do you see any negatives, any downside?
I think it would be take a lot of getting used to. But as far as your original question of do we see it happening? Do I think it would happen in the US? I'm leaning toward yes, because a number of countries, today you mentioned Belgium in your article, but a number of other countries have already instituted that. I believe Iceland and a few others to some degree. And my thought is this, is that it seems that it is catching on globally, big cities or country by country. And if that continues to happen and the US doesn't partake, then all of a sudden we're going to sort of be branded as, I don't want to work in the US, and people in the US would maybe, move to other countries to get that, so I think we just have to follow suit. And it would be a slow process, maybe civil employees first, things like that, maybe state by state. But yeah, I think it's hopeful, and not too many downsides, lots of upsides. But again, that's my thought.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a clarification. So there's a number of companies here in the US have adopted the 4-day work week. And I guess I'm making a differentiation between, certain countries that are just making it for everybody, or the civil service government workers. So here in the US, yeah, there's a lot of companies that are doing it. But as Christine's mentioned, we haven't really found like a company, like an Intel, like a Google, like a Microsoft, like an Apple, like a Target, that's going out there on record saying 4-day work week. So it's almost like you need that tipping point, that big marquee name to say, hey, we're doing it, and then everybody else will follow suit.
Yes, I agree with that. Absolutely. It does seem some of the, really woke, tech companies have instituted it, but you're right, no marquee names yet. Of those that you just mentioned, though, I'm just going to single out Target as an example, though. They're a retail store. Of course, they have a huge online business as well. But, for a company's business model and what they offer, things like retail services and all, there'll be some companies that just can't, transition over to that, I think. Or if they do, they'll alternate, out of 100 workers, 50 will work these 4 days, and the other 50 will work Tuesday through Friday, so that they have every weekday covered.
That sounds right, because I can't, it's not just a retail driven one, but any company, because I'd imagine there's always something. So let's say as a customer, I have an issue, I'm a vendor, whatever it may be, and it's Friday, and I want to get in touch with the company and no one's there. That could be really super frustrating for the person. Say, hey, I don't want to do business with you folks anymore because I need you and you're not around. So I think, Mike, you're right. They probably have to figure out, maybe not everybody could be off on the same day, that they have to stagger it a little bit. And think about, what about the people who maintain the technology? Not so much the software engineers, but the folks keep things running. What if something goes wrong and no one's around on Friday, come in Monday and none of the computers are working? So yeah, I think they have to I don't think it's going to be reasonable to think everybody all at once is going to be off, where you'd probably have to have a team that's off on a Thursday or Friday. But then, Christine, would would that be problematic too, that you don't know who's going to be on, when they're going to be on, and it could just be a little chaotic?
That mixed in with remote work, because even assembling
Yeah.
a team, it's kind of hard to reach people, and then having to keep track of who's in the office and who isn't on a certain day. Yeah, it could get difficult. And then a company's not going to institute a program that will affect the bottom line. So there definitely needs to be procedures in place to even make this work in the first place.
Do you also think it'll kind of, people will impose upon the remote workers? Because I feel it started already, and you probably see this more and more, where there's this proximity bias. So if you're in the office, people are going to notice you more. You might get better assignments. You might get, way more raises and promotions and bonuses and surveys to show that that's what happens. And then if you're just working remotely, you could be a second-class citizen and be forgotten. But then I wonder what would happen with a 4-day work week. They would just presume, well, you're at home anyway, so you might as well do this work. And it just get dumped on the people who are working remote, who are like out of sight, out of mind. Do you think that would happen too?
That's a good point. That's why I like Belgium. They also have it where you can't reach out to people beyond working hours as well.
You want to talk about that? But Belgium and Portugal, you want to, because that's interesting as well. You want to share that? And maybe let's see if talk about whether this happened in the US.
Yeah, it's even, I think, I don't know if I'm being dramatic, but it's illegal. Like a boss cannot reach out to their employees after work hours or on the weekend. So if we institute something like that, then remote workers would be covered, I think.
Do you think that's even possible here, the way we have this hustle porn culture in the US, that companies will, willingly say, oh, sure, we're never going to contact anyone after 5 o'clock?
I don't, and then for being such an industrial country, like we're not very progressive when you compare us to Europe. Like we're so behind in labor laws, like even like the parental leave, like that's not mandated. We're one of the only countries where that's not mandated. So as much as people think that the US is like this progressive country, it really isn't.
Well, doesn't it all go back to the beginning of the country with like, what was it, the Protestant work ethic, where it was just drilled into people that, and I'm not saying right or wrong, different, but right, drilled in like, work is good, work is positive, you should be working. And that just kind of never changed really for the most part.
Yeah, we've been working the 40-hour work week since 1940.
It's not even 40, it's like more than like right now, right? Don't you feel it's way more than 40?
Yeah.
I'm working like all the time. And not because I'm a hustle porn guy, but it's just, I don't know. I find myself working it's just because time is warped during this whole pandemic that you're like, all right, I might as well just work and be productive.
Plus there is that hustle porn culture too, where you feel like if you're not working, you're missing out, or you'll potentially lose a client and fall behind. There's that mentality as well.
And it kind of, it's tough because there's some truth to that, so that let's say with a 4-day work week, and let's take a recruiting firm. So let's say a company needs an assignment to recruit for somebody, and they call us up, but yet we're off on Friday, then they're going to go to somebody else and they'll get the assignment and we lose out. So it kind of, the way it's set up, because of competition, it's almost like you always have to be on. So you get noticed and you get part of the action. Otherwise you feel left out.
Yeah, that's why you would need like a federal mandate as opposed to just companies like picking and choosing. That way everyone has the same expectations and the same values.
Yes, and if I might add, Jackie, you bring up an interesting point about the Protestant work ethic. Do we ever see this happening where will be the norm? And as far as that law where you can't contact anyone for 3 days, or any time off hours. That could be instituted through employment and labor laws. But I think there is hope, 20, 30, 50 years from now, that if it becomes more of a norm, then everyone will have it ingrained in their minds that, hey, instead of like we all think now of the weekend, well, you're just going to add an extra day to that, and it won't be so strange, and there won't be so much of a fear of missing out, on business and things like that. But again, not to get too existential about the whole thing.
Unfortunately, well, fortunately, I hope I'm not working 50 years from now, Mike. So I don't
Yeah,
have to worry about
but
it. Or 30
absolutely.
years from now. Hopefully that's not the case. Although we're living longer. So the odds are, yeah, people could be working till like their 70s. You know, it used to be 65. I wouldn't be surprised it's 70s or more now.
By the time I retire, who knows if there will still be
100.
Social Security.
There's no social security. You know, worked like 100. That's it. You know, we bankrupted ourselves. Let me throw this out too. Here's a little thing that Dorothy Dalton pointed out, where I've noticed there's this group that's founded by Andrew Barnes and Charlotte Lockhart, and they're piloting a lot of these programs for 4-day work weeks, but they're purists and they feel the 4-day work week, you know, 4 days, Friday off, and 9 to 5. But there are some companies and countries like Belgium, it seems, they're not doing it that way. So they're cramming in 38 hours of work into 4 days. So now you have a long, each day is really long. Now, if that's the case, are you just better off working 5 days or 4 days with longer hours?
That could be stressful and definitely counterintuitive. I liken that to the vacation mentality. You know, you're so excited you're going to go on vacation, but the week before you go on vacation is always hell. It never fails because you have to make sure all your ducks are in a row before you leave and that everything's taken care of. And I think the same could translate into working 4 days for sure.
Because I would imagine, instead of helping with mental health and emotional well-being and burnout, that could cause more burnout, because now you're kind of, oh my God, I got to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And then you're working, you know, extra couple of hours each day more. And so that, I don't know, then the time you get off, you're just shot, you're exhausted. And I'm not sure if that's the right way to do it. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, these are all valid points. I think, you know, it comes down to, you know, whatever you're producing for 5 days, if you're going to squeeze it into 4, it's almost a given that you've got to work a bit longer in those extra hours. As far as, you know, if someone has a choice, I think it boils down to a personal preference. You know, some people would rather work, you know, an hour or two longer for only those 4 days, and then you get a 3-day weekend all the time. I mean, personally, I would choose the former. You know, work a little longer for each of the 4 days, and always have that extra day off.
I think with the Belgian one, you had the option to take the 4 days with the extra hours each day, or just keep the 5 days. So it wasn't as if like you could pick and choose and redesign it around. It was kind of an either or. But then again, they just put it out. So I wonder, they could be A/B testing as well. You know, you put it out, let's see, let's get feedback. You know, do people like it, not like it? Is it better? Is it not better? Are they productive, not productive? So I'm hoping that, you know, Belgium and other places that do it are kind of really testing, giving surveys, getting feedback to see, hey, is this working or not working? And if it's working, like what parts are working? And if it's not working, like what's wrong that we have to fix? So this way we can take that data and then make more intelligent, you know, decisions for other 4-day, you know, for other companies to do 4-day work weeks.
Yeah, I think Iceland will be a benchmark for the 4-day work week, because right now they have 85% of their workforce working for a 4-day work week. I want to know what they're doing.
That's a
I
lot.
They're doing it. Yeah.
I was just going to say, what is it that they do in Iceland?
Yeah.
But wait, isn't Iceland's the one that's like not so cold, and Greenland is the one that's cold, but Iceland is the one that's not as cold? Do I have that right or no?
It sounds right. Like I couldn't verify.
It's like the opposite of the name of the country, right?
Right.
Because the reason I'm gonna say that, because if Iceland is really cold, what difference does it make? It's so cold, you want to go outside, you might as well work. But wants to go out like, you know, 50 degrees below zero or whatever. But I don't know if that's the one in Iceland or not. Shows how like here in the US, we have no idea what goes on elsewhere. It's embarrassing.
I definitely would want to see like a study or just gauging like worker happiness once it is implemented, to see if it does move the dial as far as like mental health. I know in March 2020, there was a survey where even though people reported higher well-being and less burnout, there were higher levels of active disengagement, which I thought was shocking, because you would think that, someone would get the 4-day work week, and almost be like appreciative of it and be more engaged and more productive, but that wasn't the case. And I don't know if that's because it was pre-pandemic, so they didn't really appreciate it as much as people would now
Interesting.
once we've tasted that freedom and like autonomy. But yeah, do you guys know why, like, why do you think that there was active disengagement?
I don't know if I had to guess, because like it's so interesting. The mindset being in a pandemic is so different now than it was. So I wonder if I kind of, I don't know how you feel. Sometimes it's hard to kind of remember what it was like before being in a pandemic. But I guess before then, if you're not working that extra day, maybe you just lose connection and you don't feel the same. But now we're used to not being connected. So we're used to it. Back then, we're not. So that it seemed odd and it puts you kind of off kilter.
That's a good point. That makes sense. And let me throw this thought out. We're talking all these 4-day work weeks. The country's instituted a policy, things like that. I think over time there's also the fact that let each company do operate how they want to. And it seems that to me a natural progression if some of these big name firms do offer that policy. I think, eventually it's going to catch on. There'll be studies to see whether it works or not. And, I think human nature, you're resistant when you're told you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
Like for the US to put in a mandate that's, it's certainly in theory doable. But I think, the external forces of, just companies given a choice, if more and more catch on, it's just going to gravitate toward that type of policy.
I'll give you an
without
example,
having
Mike.
to be a mandate.
Give you an example, like Microsoft Japan tried that out. They had a 4-day work week and they had a study in the survey and they kind of kept track of it. And the results were very positive. They said that productivity was up, output was increased, and people felt better. But you're not sure, because I don't know how you could test for this, but you're not sure if people self-reported in a certain way because they wanted a 3-day work week. So they worked extra hard during that trial period to say, all right, let's do whatever we got to do to get that 3-day work week, and, got all that output, all the productivity, and get the 3-day work week. But now moving forward, how is it? Because I don't think there was any studies after the fact. So it's still a little open, in terms of that. But here's another thing too. So let's say you have 4 days. Everyone has a lot of work to do. Now, do you feel the pressure every day? Like, oh my gosh, I got to get all this done. And does that take a toll? Where you're looking at a mountain of stuff you have to get done and you now have 4 days to get it done. Do you either stress out and you're anxious, or you just make it your business? Hey, I come in the morning, I got my 8 hours, and I'm just going to put on blinders, get it done because I want 3 days off. What do you think?
I think it could teach people to manage their time better.
I think that's right. I mean, I remember going back in the day when we all went into the offices. Let's be honest, we would see this all, you see this all the time. You come in at the crack of 9:15 and then, you take off your jacket, you get, comfortable in your chair, turn on the computer, and then you like turn around. Hey, anyone want a Starbucks? And then you go out and do a Starbucks run and get some breakfast. And then you come back and now it's like 10-ish. And then within another hour, you're talking about where we're going to go for lunch. And then you have a conversation for 20 minutes about lunch. And then just go through this throughout the day. And there's so many points in time. And I'm not saying people are just, being jerks. I'm just saying it's like human nature. And then because time expands, so you feel, hey, I got all day. Don't worry, I'll get to it. So then before you know it, the day is over. And you're like, was I really productive? Whereas with a 4-day work week, does that really like push you? Like you have no choice but to measure everything you're doing all the time. Is this productive? Yes, I'm going to keep doing it. If it's not productive, I'm just going to ignore it.
And I also think people will take less sick days, because if you have, let's say you're off on Friday, that could be the designated day you go to doctor's appointments and stuff, as opposed to taking a day off here and there. Your day off could be your designated day for those kind of appointments, and you would need less days off. So I think that it could help in that way.
That's interesting. Do you think companies could then start feeling, hey, they're abusing it, they're taking, sick day here, a personal day there, more vacation days, and like, wait, where is everybody?
Yeah. Well, listen, let's clarify. One thing is, if you're sick and really sick,
Yeah.
you're not even thinking about that. It's just, my God, hey, there's no way I can work today. It's interesting, your point, Jack, about, kind of the office mentality and, time's wasted. And then, you feel if someone walks into your office or in a big, open environment, that there's a chat going on and they ask you a question, you feel obligated to be, professionally courteous and engage in the argument for a bit. So I think it would be easier for people to get their now 5 days of work into working for remote, if they're working remotely, because you won't have those distractions, and it is easier to focus and make, the full use of that time. For on-site, in the office full time, it would be a challenge. And then if those that do focus and everything, the behavior might be considered a little bit rude, or that person, oh, you can't even approach him or her, so I think there's a distinction there to be made.
Also, what about this? I don't know about you two and people watching, for a weekend, there's at least usually one day that you're involved with shopping, doing stuff around the house, running chores. By late Sunday, you're kind of preparing for work the next day. So kind of one day is completely just shot. So you're really talking about like a Saturday, let's say, and that's not a lot of time to recuperate. So I wonder, not to go off on a tangent here, but to stick with me on this. Think about this for a second. It's no secret here in the US. Let's just talk about US because I can't really comment on other countries and how they are, but I can say what here. Let's be honest, everybody's aggravated, everybody's stressed, everyone's angry, everyone's going to just yell at each other, whether it's on social media, whether it's in real life. It's like everyone's like one hair trigger away from just going berserk. And could it be in part is that we put in so many hours, we work so hard, and now we're not commuting as much, but when we were commuting back and forth, almost, it could be up to 3 hours plus a day in commuting time, being on a crowded bus, a crowded train, stuck in this office. And if you're in one of these modern office buildings, you can't even open up the windows. You're under fluorescent lights. How can you not be miserable? If you really think about it, if you wanted to design a system to drive people nuts, that's like a way to do it. Am I kind of off base here? Am I kind of off the rails or no?
No, I agree. And I think one step further, people also crave that autonomy. I think that's why so many people gravitate towards like the gig economy, because they get to set their own schedules. And I think moving forward, workers are going to look for that kind of flexibility in their employment. And we don't even have to keep it to just the 4-day work week. It could be shortened work days or just like the staggered hours. Lauren on the comments said, the thing I miss about phone sales was the option to work 10 hours for 4 days instead of 8 for 5. Amber said she worked for a mutual company in the late 90s that allowed everyone to choose a flex schedule, 40 hours over 4 days, and we were all happy. They also implemented new systems to increase efficiency and proactively raise salaries to stay competitive.
So interesting. It kind of makes sense because everyone has their own biorhythms, like what they're comfortable with. Like I would feel totally comfortable waking up, and I have no choice because my dogs and cats wake me up. My cat wakes me up to feed her the dog. He has to do his business. So I'm sometimes up, no exaggeration, like 3, 4 in the morning. And trust me, I'd rather not be, but I have no choice. So I'm up, but then once I'm up, I can't go back to sleep. So I would do from like, let's say 5 o'clock, let's be generous, 5 o'clock to, I don't know, 12, 1, and then I'm done. How cool would that be? So yeah, if you could have some kind of different flexible schedule that fits around your life. Now, what about a working mom who has to kind of navigate her kids and go to school and back to make it that she's not stressed racing into an office because she has to drop her kids off or racing home early. So you kind of work around that. That would be such a distressor, right?
Yeah. And then moms also have to take their kids to doctor's appointments. That's why it could be good to have that designated day just to do that. So it doesn't in turn impact women as much. I think they're the ones that will benefit the most from this, honestly.
So what other things do you think, if it's not 4 days, any other kind of cool alternative that would kind of de-stress people, give them some more balance in work and life?
I think letting people choose the hours that they want to work, because some people are productive, some people are morning people, some people are night owls, and some people do their best thinking like late at night. So I don't think it's about the time you put in. I think we have to shift our mindset to like the outcome. And yeah, I think it's productivity, and just we have to look at the outcome rather than the time that you put in.
So interesting, because pre-pandemic, that wasn't talked about. It's like FaceTime. You know, where's Jack? Is he in the office? Is he sitting there? I remember back in the day, I would write blogs about, okay, when you get in, make sure like you have your jacket behind your chair, you know, you have like your coffee on your desk and half-eaten bagel, so that if the boss walks by and you're not there, they know you're working. Or I would tell people, okay, you know, in some of the blog posts, you know, send emails really early in the morning, or set it to go early in the morning, late at night to show you're working, because it was more about the FaceTime and the appearance that you're working, as opposed to like, are you really productive? And now when everybody was home, I think it went to productivity to see who's really working.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I remember, just back in the day, pre-pandemic and all, there were some firms where I would hear this from, different candidates in different roles, but work for that company. Like, one of the things that just drives me crazy, why I'm open to hearing about opportunities, is because, there's a mentality and a culture that everyone is looking around. No one wants to be the first to leave. And so even
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yes.
right, 5 or 6. I know the firm, but I'm not going to mention it. But yeah, and it was prevalent throughout. And
it's common. Now that you mentioned, I remember that, like working, before I went into recruiting. Yeah, it's like you don't want to be the first one to leave, because everyone's going to look at you like, loser. You're not a worker, and you'd be labeled.
Yeah.
Or if you come in late too, same thing. If you come in late.
Right, and sometimes there is you really have to look at this as individuals as well, because as far as cramming in extra hours, whatever. I mean, you can look at it this way, that you know what you're responsible for, and of course, sales is a different animal, because you're always hustling, and there are always more deals to make. You're only as good as your last deal, what have you. But if you're doing IT or working on a project, and you've got 3 weeks to get it done. I mean, if you really, work hard and focus right and work smart, you could get that project done within 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So the same thing, you could break it down to, over 5 days or over 4, but it's up to the person working smart and knowing what they're responsible for. So, it's going to vary. It's hard to generalize, to a certain degree.
So let me just give you a quick rundown of some of the places. I'm not sure if you're aware, but here in the US, Democratic Congressman Mark Takano has put in a little while ago to get a 40-hour work week, actually to knock it down to 32 hours. So he's looking to get a 4-day work week here in the US. I'm not sure where it stands. I know he put the bill before Congress, but I guess we're waiting to see, and he's trying to get, he has the progressive wing of the Democrats who are trying to support him on it, but I'm not sure where it's up to, but it's out there. The United Arab Emirates, Iceland, as Christine mentioned, Japan, Spain, Scotland, and now Belgium. And here in the US, I want to say the last time we wrote about it, Christine, it was like 50 countries, companies. I keep kind of saying companies and countries interchanged. About 50 of them, right, have signed up.
Yeah. And I think also Ireland is going to roll out a pilot program, Canada, Australia. And I'm not sure if you mentioned New Zealand.
And I think Wales too, right?
Yeah.
So it does seem it's taking on a life of its own. Now, what happens, not to be that guy, but what happens if the job market cools off? Do you think all this stops, or it's once the genie's out of the bottle, it's going to keep going like this?
I think it'll keep going because the workforce is getting younger and younger, and they have different standards. Like Gen Z is very adamant about what they will accept. So I hope to constantly see these changes happening.
Yeah, it does feel with the pandemic and with a hot job market, hard to find talent, that it's really shifted. And Microsoft the other day came out saying, hey, we want people back, I think the 28th of this month. And sure, we're going to find a lot of other companies saying that too. But they risk kind of a worker revolt where they'll say, wait, I don't want to come back. Why do I have to come back? Because there are other opportunities. And they're going to just say, I'll find another job remotely. And then I wonder what's going to happen. And we talked about this the other day in New York, where people are concerned, like, all right, I know you want us to come back to help the city thrive, but that's not my problem. I want to have a balanced life. So we're kind of an interesting place, right?
Yeah, we have to evolve with the times. We've been working the 40-hour work week since the 1940s. I think it's time for some change. And Andrew Barnes actually has a good quote. He said the 5-day week is a 19th century construct that is not fit for the purpose of the 21st century. I agree with that.
You know what the biggest scam is too, if you think about it? By 4 o'clock, how many people are really giving it 100%? You know, but you're just so tired. You're tired, you're run down, especially on a Thursday or Friday. You know, so are you really maximizing that person's potential? Or wouldn't it be better off saying, okay, you know what? I think, Christine, you mentioned this before. Instead of going to 5 o'clock, how about 4? So this way you can get out, beat traffic, get home, and be well rested. And you probably will be much more productive the next day than having to put in such a long day, commuting home, commuting in the next morning, and just constantly being exhausted and tired.
Yes, and you know what? Let me add one more thing. You know, everyone, since we're focused on these, 8-hour days, 40-hour weeks, what goes on? You know, there used to be a general thing, although it really wasn't, written in stone anymore. But usually there's a mindset of you've got an hour to take lunch, or it might be a half an hour. So right there, if you're working, 9 to 5. You're at lunch for an hour, so it's really only 7 hours a day.
So you're saying we shouldn't have lunchtime?
No, I'm just saying.
So should I quote you on this? Mike Teller says no lunches.
No, but in other words, you know what I mean? Like, so, okay, if work is supposed to be a full 8 hours,
yeah,
do you not take lunch, or do you work till 6 because you're out for an hour?
I think most people work through lunch nowadays, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, true. And I know we're working remotely. It's a fantastic option because, again, you can eat healthier. You can absolutely save some money. And, sorry, Mayor Adams. But, again, if you could shop at home, you don't have to patronize, listen, at least in New York City, in Midtown, the prices are just outrageous for just a little semi-breakfast and then any kind of decent lunch as well. So,
yeah, but it's definitely interesting because if we had this conversation 5 years ago, I would say, come on, this is not going to happen. This is wild. But it's not only the 4-day work week. Think about it. A lot of companies, excuse me, are offering flexibility, and they define flexibility as, hey, if you want to come into the office, you come into the office. If you don't want to, you don't have to. If you want to come in for a week straight, great. If you don't, that's fine. And that's kind of cool because you're giving autonomy and freedom to people to be adults and let them make the choice. Because theoretically, if you're hiring somebody, you're hiring someone because you believe in them and you trust them. So then why then are you going to micromanage them all the time and drive them nuts? Let them just work the way they do best. What's wrong with, all right, maybe you start the day much later and you like working way into the night and you're more productive. So why make the person work the hours that they don't want to work? We're finding out like different things. Another one I like the fact is that with remote work, people could have much more options. So let's say you're in Arkansas, Mississippi, South Dakota, and you wanted to work for a Silicon Valley firm, or you wanted to work on Wall Street. You couldn't do it because you couldn't commute. But with remote work, now you have that option. Or let's say, you know what, I don't want to keep living in New York or New Jersey because it's really expensive, high taxes. And then if you can move to a lower cost place with less taxes, nicer weather, and earn the same money, wow, that's fantastic. So a lot of these trends I'm seeing in the workplace is really positive. You know, they're not going to be perfect, like we're talking about with 4-day work week. You know, there's good and bad, and there's things you have to consider. But net, it's really cool that we're seeing this. And I think, Mike, I know in yours and mine and Christine, even your kind of work tenure, there was never this vibe going on where you having more of these options, or at least these conversations too.
That's true. Now employees are getting to choose when, where, and how they work.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. I have a question though. Do you think that like implementing a 4-day work week could maybe up the employee surveillance to make sure that people are staying like on target and stuff?
Absolutely. I think, I think what happens is this. You could probably have two different types of companies developing. One that are going to trust their workers and empower their workers and have faith in them, and others that are going to put in tattleware, spyware, micromanage them, tell them to get back into the office, old school. And I think then what's going to happen from there is the companies that really give people autonomy and freedom and respect and dignity are the ones that are going to prosper, because after a while, if you're working in a company that has a heavy hand, you're like, all right, I'm out of here. If I have a choice, I'm going to go where they really appreciate me and show gratitude. So I could see different styles developing.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
So interesting topic, right, guys? Like it's wild to see this happening and happening in real time. So whether I would suggest, and one of the things I'm hoping for the people who are watching this, you could take this and bring it to your company, because let's say you don't have a 4-day work week. Let's say you don't have it where the company is off for a week and everyone can just chill and disconnect. What if your company doesn't care about your mental health, emotional well-being, and burnout? What if, they're not really putting in programs and stuff to help you? They're not offering coaching or mentoring or what have you, that you could kind of go to your manager and say, wait a minute, this is going on. Other companies are doing it. So why aren't we? So it gives you some ammunition to go in there and say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's see if we could do this as well. And then I could see this spreading, so that, because the more companies, the ones who do it, employees going to gravitate there. So then the other companies are going to have to do it as well. So it becomes this really cool cycle of who could give the better offerings to attract people. And then hopefully it becomes more money, more time off, more vacation, more personal days off, and so on. And it becomes a really cool thing for everybody.
Yeah, that's right. And, I just want to ask you one thing. I believe in the beginning of the show, you mentioned that if you're going to work on a 4-day work week, you may not earn as much money as you did if you were working 5 days. Am I right on that?
No.
Oh, okay.
The way that some of these companies are doing it is that it would be, same money, same everything.
Right.
It's just 4 days. So the thing is in reality, then probably just a little bit more stress, because it's just human nature, like to get everything done within those 4 days, or you end up working a little bit extra on the 3 days off. But yeah, the idea is the same kind of money. But I'll tell you this, there's one company in Spain, I forgot, it was a fashion house, Desenguel, I don't know, I'm kind of completely butchering the name, where they did cut the pay for the time off. But that was the aberration. A lot of the companies that are doing these 4-day work weeks, 4 days, keep your pay, get everything done in 4 days, 3 days to relax, and then you can come back all well rested.
And I think overall, it's interesting, and you both made these points, is that it's nice to have this flexibility. Yes, we're discussing it, but to some workers, it already exists now. And again, that's something that was not prevalent in, as long as I've been working.
Well, to end on a good note, it's what, President's Day Monday? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
President's Day, and I think most people are off. So we'll experience a 3-day, we'll have a 3-day weekend. So we thought this would be a good day to have this conversation about a 4-day work week and a 3-day work weekend. And we're
Right.
heading to a 3-day weekend. So
And I would
everybody,
like- I'm sorry, I would like all our listeners to take stock. What did they do for these 4 days? Well, excuse me, actually, it will be the end of next week because you'll only
Yeah.
be working 4 days. Did you get as much done by having that Monday off?
that'd be interesting, right? To see like at the end of the day, say, hey, we were just, 1 day, but we still were pretty productive and met our goals and exceeded our goals. That'd be
Yes.
interesting to see. So thank you, everybody for watching and listening. And we'll, repost this as a podcast. So we'll put it back on, social media, again in the future, so you can watch it. And feel free, if you have any topics you want us to cover, any thoughts, any comments, you want to come on the show, you have something that you want to talk about, let us know. So thank you very much for watching and have a great 3-day weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.